wind howled through the mountain pass as the sun dipped low behind the snow-capped ridges, painting the Wyoming sky in streaks of gold and fire. John Caldwell tightened his worn coat around his shoulders, squinting against the flurries that whipped across the trail. He'd been heading home from town, a sack of supplies tied to his saddle, when he spotted something unusual by the broken post fence near the Miller homestead, a stagecoach sitting, abandoned. One wheel sunken deep into the snow. The driver was gone, but in the back seat sat a woman, shivering, clutching a letter to her chest. Her dress was too fine for the weather, cream-colored and delicate, like something from another world. John dismounted slowly, boots crunching in the snow. "Ma'am," he called gently, his breath fogging in the cold air. "You all right?" She looked up, her eyes glassy with fear and exhaustion. I was supposed to meet Mr. Miller," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He sent for me. A mail-order bride." John's stomach turned as he glanced toward the dark, silent cabin beyond the fence. Everyone in town knew that Henry Miller had skipped out months ago, running south to escape his debts. The woman didn't know. She'd come all this way, left everything behind, for a man who'd left her behind before she even arrived. "Ma'am," John said softly, "I'm afraid Miller ain't here. Ain't been for a long time." Her hands trembled harder, the letter fluttering from her grip. "Then what am I supposed to do?" she asked, her breath catching. "The coachman's gone, my things are gone. I have nowhere to go." John hesitated, staring at her, so lost, so fragile against the bitter cold. He wasn't one to take in strangers, not since the war took his wife and child, leaving his heart sealed like the mountains in winter. But there was something about this woman, something honest in her eyes, something that tugged at the emptiness he'd carried for years. "You can't stay out here," he said finally, pulling off his coat and draping it around her shoulders. "Come with me. I've got a cabin up yonder. It ain't much, but it's warm." She blinked, hesitating, then nodded weakly. He helped her onto his horse, her gloved hands clutching his arm for balance. They rode in silence, the only sound the crunch of hooves and the whine of the wind. When they reached his cabin, John led her inside, stoked the fire until the room glowed amber, and handed her a mug of coffee. "What's your name?" he asked. She stared into the flames, her lips trembling before she spoke. "Clara," she said softly. "Clara Mayfield. Well, Miss Mayfield," he replied, tipping his hat slightly. "You're safe here now." She looked up, her eyes shimmering with gratitude and something unspoken. For the first time in a long while, John felt the stillness in his home lift, like the fire warming not just the cabin, but the cold chambers of his own heart. The days turned slowly into weeks, the snow piling high around the cabin, cutting them off from the nearest town. Clara helped around the place, cooking, mending, feeding the horses, her delicate hands learning the rough rhythm of frontier life. John found himself watching her more often than he cared to admit. The way she brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear while kneading dough, or how she hummed softly when hanging laundry by the fire. She had a gentleness that softened even the silence of the mountains. At night they'd sit by the fire, her reading old letters aloud, him whittling wood and pretending not to listen too close. One evening, a blizzard rolled in fierce and sudden, rattling the shutters and shaking the door. Clara stood by the fire, the flickering light dancing over her face, fear shadowing her eyes. "John," she said, her voice barely above the wind, "do you ever get lonely out here?" He looked up, setting his knife down. "Every day," he admitted. "But I made peace with it long ago." She stared at him for a moment, then said softly, "Maybe you weren't meant to stay lonely forever." He didn't know what to say. The storm raged through the night, and when the fire burned low, Clara fell asleep in the chair beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. For the first time in years, John felt something stir inside him, not just warmth, but life. The next morning he found her outside, bundled in her shawl, gazing at the sunrise painting the snow pink and gold. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes reflecting the morning light. "Never thought I'd find beauty again." He stepped beside her, his gloved hand brushing against hers. "Maybe sometimes," he said quietly, "we find what we need in the places we least expect." Clara turned, meeting his gaze, and in that quiet moment, surrounded by the endless white, they both understood what had begun between them. When spring finally came, the thaw opened the roads again, and a stagecoach arrived from town. The driver asked if the lady wished to leave to find her way elsewhere. Clara looked back at John, standing on the porch with the morning sun spilling over his shoulders, and she smiled faintly. "No," she said, her voice steady. "I've already found where I belong." Months later, travelers passing through would speak of a cowboy and a woman who lived in a cabin up in the hills, how laughter replaced loneliness, and love bloomed in the ashes of abandonment. Sometimes love doesn't come when we plan it. It finds us when we least expect it, like sunlight breaking through the clouds after the longest winter.